Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel. And of course, we have some top stories and breaking news. Many of you are aware that there is a potential threat of Russia potentially going further into Ukraine. I'll go more into the description of that here in just a moment. Now, as we have talked about here on the channel before, there are several things that you can always count on when we have a Democrat president. Taxes will be higher. Our economy will be strained. The Democrats will weaponize agencies within our government, like the IRS and the FBI, to pursue its political enemies, as we even saw during the Trump administration when they pursued him on a fabricated story about Russian collusion for 2.5 years. Yes, and no journalist or media agencies were suspended or banned on Twitter. We can also see that our allies will reach their hands out for that friendship money, or else they will criticize the United States. And as you all know, popularity is the most important virtue of the Democrats and the left. So, of course, they will give these countries money so that they don't get criticized. And, of course, the most important, as we see right here, our adversaries will saber-rattle and posture. Now, how can I prove all of this? Well, that's kind of a rhetorical question because we already are seeing it. Now, from the Washington Post, Russia planning massive military offensive against Ukraine involving 175,000 troops, U.S. intelligence warns. Well, this is kind of interesting and a bit of a misnomer because the Russians have already gone into the Ukraine. They have already taken over in Crimea. Apparently, this gets overlooked. We'll get into more of that detail here in just a moment, but let's read from the Washington Post. As tensions mount between Washington and Moscow over a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has already happened, U.S. intelligence have found the Kremlin is planning a multi-front offensive as soon as early next year involving up to 175,000 troops, according to U.S. officials and an intelligence document obtained by the Washington Post. Now, it really makes one wonder how much intelligence is actually going on and how much is actually going on within the boundaries of diplomacy among the countries. Now, this is from December 3rd of 2021, but of course we can already see the escalation happening right now. For example, from the New York Times, Biden weighs deploying thousands of troops to Eastern Europe and Baltics. The president is also considering deploying warships and aircraft to NATO allies in what would be a major shift from its restrained stance on Ukraine. Wow, restrained stance. The United States is in its most weakest position. We have a feckless, ineffectual, establishment-appointed vote-by-mail president with a diversity-hire vice president. I know that's very strong language, but that's the truth. And the truth can be difficult to admit, particularly today. I mean, my goodness, comedians can't even work in today's hypersensitive society. But as we see here, a little into this article, Washington, President Biden is considering deploying several thousand U.S. troops as well as warships and aircraft to NATO allies in the Baltics and Eastern Europe. An expansion of American military involvement aimed at mounting fears of a Russian incursion. Oh, wow. My incursion into Ukraine, which has already happened, according to the administration officials, or according to administration officials. And it's just absolutely stunning, is it not? As we sit here as regular everyday people, be sure you hit that like button and, of course, subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to show the algorithm that this type of content is what should be floating around without being demonetized here on YouTube, particularly after the aforementioned deal of a 2.5-year fabrication perpetrated by the media and the Democrats. Why can I not just read articles and give my opinion without being demonetized? I ask in just summation. All right, so we move along here and we see from NPR, the U.S. will provide $200 million in military aid to Ukraine-aimed crisis. Well, why do we have NATO? You guys remember when we had President Trump in there and he went overseas and they said he was a big oaf and a big ogre and he lumbered around and he didn't know where to stand to get his picture taken and all this sort of things? No, President Trump went over there and he made these countries pay their fair share, is what he did. And we carry the weight of NATO. Pretty much we pay, 60% of NATO? We pay for that. We basically pay for a hired military private security service whose function is to impregnate the local indigenous people that they go and try to protect. That's what NATO does. That's what the UN does. That's what they're good at. They're good at going to these countries and impregnating the local indigenous people. All right, so the U.S. will provide $200 million in military aid to Ukraine. Now, here's Secretary of State Little Anthony Blinken, who was dressed down by the Chinese in Alaska during those talks here. I mean, you talk about just the Chinese putting this guy in his place and demonstrating the feckless, weak current government the U.S. has. And, of course, we haven't even talked about China. I mean, as far as what China is about to do, China has already been flying sorties into Taiwan. We have talked about this since, 2019? We've been talking about this way back in the day. So you guys who watch the channel, if you haven't hit the like already, make sure you've done that. Know already, if you watch this channel, how we stay on the cutting edge of societal evolution, as the great Rush Limbaugh used to say. Right here on the BuzWeaver channel, you are going to get the condensed, you are going to get the, we take the complicated and we make it simple. So anyway, so let's read here. Kiev, Ukraine. As U.S. Secretary of State Little Anthony Blinken visits Ukraine, the Biden administration said Wednesday it's providing an additional $200 million in defense military aid to the country amid soaring fears of a Russian invasion. Okay, well, we're already providing 60% to NATO. So $200 million more? Is that going to do it? Is it about the money? Is that how easy it is? Is just simply just providing the money? A senior U.S. Department official said the assistance was approved in late December, which was why I read the article from December, to just kind of give you guys a little bit of a refresher. As part of American efforts to help Ukraine protect itself. Well, that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're going to get into that here in a moment. Until Wednesday, however, the administration had refused to commit or to comment on it. The official wasn't authorized to discuss the matter publicly before Blinken's meeting in Kiev and spoke on conditions of anonymity. They love using their sources, their named sources or unnamed sources, and of course the conditions of anonymity. The favorite thing used by many in the media, which basically means that they went to the water cooler, they talked to each other, or they went on Twitter within the echo chambers of Twitter. Now, you might be asking yourself, why did I kind of brush through this a bit? So I, of course, as you guys know, I try to get this information consolidated down and read as best as I can. And then, of course, I have to inject certain words and phrasing and so forth to get around the AI. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button. All right. So as we have discussed here on the channel before, because I like to keep you guys informed, you guys are in the know. If you watch this channel and you haven't already subscribed, if you are a subscriber, then you know you are getting the most detailed information, the most poignant information in gist form, so you guys can easily understand what's happening, because the media likes to complicate it and the left just likes to completely create things into chaos. So the Trilateral Process, the United States, Ukraine, Russia, and nuclear weapons. Let me just break it down for you real simply here by reading a first few of the sentences. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine had the world's third largest nuclear arsenal on its territory. When Ukrainian-Russian negotiations on removing these weapons from Ukraine appeared to break down in September 1993 during the Bill Clinton administration, the U.S. government engaged in a trilateral process with Ukraine and Russia. It's a shame there's not enough time in a day to use the word trilateral. The result was the trilateral statement signed in January 1994, under which Ukraine agreed to transfer the nuclear warheads to Russia for elimination. In return, ladies and gentlemen, in return, Ukraine received security assurances from the United States, Russia, and Britain, compensation for the economic value of the highly enriched uranium in the warheads, which could be blended down and converted into fuel for nuclear reactors, yellow cake, and assistance from the United States in dismantling the missiles, silos, so forth, and so on. So, essentially, the United States and Britain were basically supposed to help the Ukraine by compensating them for breaking down the weapons and then offering assistance and protection should Russia invade. From the New York Times, March 18th, 2014, under the Obama, that would be Barack Hussein Obama, Putin reclaims Crimea for Russia and bitterly denounces the West. So again, here we have saber-rattling and just in your face against Barack Obama. And as we just read from the Trilateral Agreement and the process, the United States is supposed to step in and help, and they did nothing. Moscow. President Vladimir Putin reclaimed Crimea as a part of Russia on Tuesday. reversing what he described as a historic injustice inflicted by the Soviet Union 60 years ago and brushing aside international condemnation that could leave Russia isolated for years to come. Are they isolated? Do they seem isolated all these years later? Here we are. We're in 2022. We have another feckless, ineffectual Democrat president who raised taxes, destroying our economy. We have shipping issues. We have transportation issues. We have employment issues, people who don't want to work. We have a series of problems that are leading to, well, we already have inflation, which is complicating things. And, of course, the shortages and just the international problems that we're experiencing, particularly from Russia. And then, of course, we have China also. China is a whole other subject, a whole other topic. But here's what we could probably anticipate. Now, Russia and China will continue to saber rattle because that's what they do, because they know that Joe Biden is a feckless, ineffectual person who has to maintain his popularity, and he will do whatever he can to appear strong, but he won't, because it's more posturing on his part than anything actionable outside of, sending money and supporting NATO and maybe sending some warships around there, which is just really not a whole lot. It's really a Band-Aid on an ever-growing wound. But suffice it to say, nothing would really stop Russia because they've already planned for all this. Russia isn't doing this out of just some whim. They've had since 2014 to think about the implications. They've had since 2014 to think about the repercussions. They already know what the repercussions can be. So them acting on this and sending troops to the border as they have been doing isn't anything particularly new to Russia. This isn't something that they've just come up with, that they're just slinging out there to see what sticks to the wall. And the reason it's framed that way is because that's what the Democrats do. They just fling things out there, see what sticks on the wall, and that's what they go with, and then pretend that people don't understand that they're just out there just reaching. So the thing here is, could we see Russia go into the Ukraine again? Again, I should say. I should emphasize again, because they're already in Crimea. So really nothing's stopping them. And as you can see here, the illustration shows where the different groups of troops are. And this is just part of the posturing. This is just part of the saber-rattling that happens. And, of course, China's doing the same thing. As I said, they sent out sorties to fly near and around Taiwan, which then, of course, causes Taiwan to have to send their aircraft out and stuff. And they're just it's attrition. It's kind of a war of attrition to kind of wear Taiwan down, and just kind of bleed them of resources, or as we say here in the United States, the lawfares. For example, when they go after President Trump or Alex Jones, they file these lawsuits and so forth, so that then the attorneys for President Trump or Alex Jones then have to file their fees and have to put in their money and have to do all, spend all their money to counter and this, that, and the other. So it's just it's a draining, complicated process that is just, there's no mystery to it. It's just the media loves to turn these things into something entirely different, as well as, of course, it gets them clicks and information. But nonetheless, guys, I'm not entirely sure what Russia will do. I don't see anything that would really prevent them from doing it. I mean, the United States right now, NATO and others, they really don't want to go to war. No countries really want to go to war. But it is interesting because I'm hearing a lot of people say that maybe because of the quick flip switch there in the United Kingdom could be part of preparing for this, because if you go to war, of course, you're going to need to be able to focus resources and everything else, because emergency measures are what governments love. They love emergency measures because they can tap into money as a source of emergency process, right? Just like when you hear vaccine mandates or mask mandates, what that really is emergency measures or emergency measured items that are put into place where we kind of forego the normal process of our laws and or our Constitution. But nonetheless, guys, I wanted to bring this to you. Now, down in the comments below, I want you guys to tell me what your thoughts are. Do you think Russia will be bold enough to make this change? Will China even capitalize on this and go into Taiwan? I'd like to know what your guys' thoughts are on this. And, of course, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because in 2022, we're going to show the algorithm this content is of value to people here on the channel. And to all of you guys on Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute, thank you for the likes, the shares, and the support there as well. I appreciate the growth that I've been getting there. It's been very interesting. And, of course, all of you here on YouTube, my loyal YouTube subscribers, thank you all. As you see there appearing on the screen, that would be the channel icon. For all of you who are new viewers, you can click on that. And by doing so, you can subscribe and click notifications to know when there's content here on the channel. And I will see you guys in the next video.